Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
With 5 minutes of my lunch break left. So here we go. Do we want to start right this sec? Yeah, fuck it, let's start right this sec. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
Hey, what's up? I'm that Matt kid.
And I'm Steve.
And he is Steve. Today we're discussing a top 10 list. We haven't done one of these in a while. It was going to be a top 12 list, but then Alfie bowed out, so now it's back to a top 10 list. That's not really a top 10 list, but you know, it's more clickable that way. Because we care so much about that here on Geeky Gentlemen, the show known for constantly bowing to the algorithm. So anyway, we're discussing our top 10 mentor characters who have a mentorship role in the world of comics, movies, fictional works, what have you. And we'll just kind of go one at a time. The way Geeky Gentleman top 10 list works is we each have 3 picks, and then we each have a honorable mention, and collectively that's 3 1/3, so there we go. So how do we want to do this? Who wants to go first? Who's dying to get their first one out there into the ether?
I can go just because I watched this pretty recently, and that's why this character's on my list.
Go for it.
So, I recently rewatched The Matrix, and it's just so fucking good. So my number 3 is Morpheus from
Oh, nice.
The Matrix. It's been so long since I've watched The Matrix, and it was a trilogy that was super important to me as a kid. Reloaded was always my favorite until I grew up and understood that movies have to have more than just fight sequences to be good. But the first Matrix movie is so goddamn good, and rewatching it again, just so many iconic moments that Morpheus has, and I just love the way that his relationship with Neo is handled in that film. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, is he really a mentor? Because when we think mentor characters in fiction, we tend to think like the wise old, wizard like Obi-Wan and stuff like that. But here's a guy who's just so fully committed to his beliefs, and he becomes a mentor. Not necessarily because he's seeking out to become a mentor, but because he just believes so passionately in Neo. So he's my number 3 pick. If anyone has anything interesting to say about Morpheus besides just how cool he is.
I mean, Lawrence Fishburne really does fucking kill that role. It's kind of insane. It's funny because I'm sure you know this, but I like this story. Sean Connery was offered the role of Gandalf, and he turned it down because this fucking Middle Earth bullshit, and it's not real acting. And then he was offered the role of Morpheus, and he turned it down. It was, this fucking sci-fi bullshit. It's not real acting. And then he was offered the role of, what is it, Arthur Cunningham or whatever for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's like, well, I turned down 2, career-making roles that would have really launched myself, so I better not turn this one down, even though it's not real acting. And then he did it, and then it's the worst.
Amazing.
So I really like to think about someone needs to do a fucking face swap deep fake of the Morpheus scenes, but with Sean Connery. That'd be a trip right there.
You're right, though. It is Lawrence Fishburne that really kind of kills that, because I can't imagine Sean Connery delivering some of those lines. I mean, I'm sure they would have written it for him, but fuck. There's no way half of that movie would play the way it does if it wasn't for like Lawrence Fishburne's dominating, commanding, kind of sarcastic presence all the time. Also, the kung fu fight, I have no idea how the fuck Sean Connery would have done that.
I mean, maybe, but it's not exactly like Lawrence Fishburne's the kung fu master of the world, you know?
I can believe him doing it more than I can believe Sean Connery doing it.
Okay, listen, Sean Connery played the fucking, what's his name, the Egyptian sword master from Spain in Highlander, okay?
This is true.
The man
Scottish Spaniard.
Yeah, the Scottish Spaniard from Egypt. Like, that's his origin in that movie. So if anyone could pull it off, it would probably be Sean Connery.
That's a fair point.
No, that's it's all fun and games. I like Lawrence Fishburne in the movie. I'll be the negative Nancy here. I really don't care for the Matrix movies that much. It's interesting the change that they've had, like, you know, culturally, since the Wachowskis have both come out as trans. I thought that like completely shifted the meta tone of that narrative.
I mean, yeah, you've got a villain who's constantly dead naming the protagonist, and it's such a fascinating rewatch with that sort of trans identity lens over it. And I would argue, I mean, to me, it has made the film really click in a way that it's never clicked before. Because I've always liked them, but it hasn't been until recently that I've thought, no, The Matrix 1, truly phenomenal. And I think something about viewing it through that lens really made kind of that last piece click in for me. And obviously, there are things I don't love about it, but I think Lawrence Fishburne's performance is consistently amazing. He's probably my favorite character in the film. And so he was kind of the big first one that jumped out to me when we were talking about this, actually.
I also sort of feel like Morpheus in the trilogy is probably the most consistently written, because I've got problems as the series goes on. I feel like Trinity gets thrown under the bus. I feel like Neo at the end kind of stops making sense. But Morpheus is always Morpheus. Maybe it's because he's always just speechifying by the end, but like, fuck, it works.
Yeah, no, I quite like that. Am I misremembering, or does Morpheus get like an Animatrix special when they did the Animatrix movie?
That's the one of those I haven't seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's like my favorite of the Matrix franchise, is the Animatrix.
That's the one Matrix movie I haven't seen, and of those like anime anthologies with like Gotham Knight and Halo Legends, I still have not seen Animatrix. I don't think he does.
I know there's one like character. I mean, it's been years. I think the last time I watched Animatrix was when like Adult Swim was broadcasting it or something.
Yeah.
But like, I think there's one character. Like, there's a story about like a couple, and they're having a debate about whether or not they should have ever left the Matrix and if they should go back. And it's like the kind of the ruin of their relationship is this debate. And it's all, you know, played out through like samurai fights and stuff. And I know one of the characters in that is a black man, and I'm trying to think if it's just, you know, that Mandela effect of thinking that it's supposed to be Morpheus's like backstory or something. But that could entirely just be me, you know, taking bits of memory and making false associations. If not, they should have. If they did an Animatrix 2, they should have done a Morpheus origin piece or something like that. That would have been dope. Because he gets like some great shit too. Like, I love the fight scene with Morpheus on the fucking semi and shit. That's great.
Oh yeah. No, some of the fight sequences in Matrix Reloaded are some of the best. But I mean, his speechifying does definitely get a little tiresome, just because I don't love that in films when it's just characters just give speeches constantly. But with Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne just sells it, and I love that he's the type of character who I feel like has been practicing these speeches for a long time, because he has been so ready for the one to show up. Like, he is just committed, and I just love him. I love him throughout the entire first film. He's consistently supportive of Neo, but he also knows how to push him. So he's an interesting character, but he also does know how to be an actual good mentor. He's just one of the most fascinating parts of that film for me.
For sure. Do we want to talk about anything more with Morpheus, or do we want to move along? All right, guess we're moving along. Steve, you're next.
My number 3, I'm sure it's still on no one else's list. What?
Shit. Hey, Matt, was yours your number 3 or your honorable mention?
That was my number 3.
Oops. Okay, I guess we're doing an honorable mention comes second to last then. All right.
Oh, I thought that's how we always did it. My bad.
I don't fucking know, Steve. I have a child, okay? I can't keep this shit in memory.
You can't just keep saying you have a child.
No, that's
all your
exactly what happens when you have a kid. Is that all you can fucking say is I have a kid.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair enough.
No, man. Like, I walked into the grocery store without a mask or pants on, and it was like 3 a.m. They're like, "Sir, you can't be in here." I'm like, "I have a child." I'm like, "Oh, yep, go right ahead."
I fucking bet you if you did that, they would still let you in. So my number 3 is very, very on brand for me. I had a tough time though because there was a couple people I was like really tossed around to see who should get this spot. But mine's Giles from Buffy. I love Giles. He starts as that sort of cliche, stuffy librarian that no one really wants to listen to because he wants to do everything by the book. But you really, really quickly, like almost immediately with season 2, get like a darker edge to him. And I know I've talked about this on the show before, but like Giles's backstory and personalities, he's basically John Constantine and he grew out of it. And so like he's got like that really dark edge to him that he understands and kind of relates to with all the people in the show. But he just turns into like a fucking stuffy bookworm, and it's adorable, and I love it. He, as like a 7-season, although he's not a main character for all 7 seasons, as a 7-season mentor for Buffy, is a really, really interesting, complex relationship because it starts so much as this antagonism of these two people from opposite worlds who just literally do not understand each other, and that's the whole joke. And it quickly becomes this father-daughter relationship almost immediately into season 2, where he treats her like her daughter. He treats her like someone that needs to learn life's lessons. After Buffy's mom dies and she comes back to life in season 6 and things have just gone crazy, he comes back and like helps her learn how to understand her finances and how to repair a house and how to apply for a loan and shit. Like he does classical dad things as much as he like trains her and explains mythology and shit. And Once More with Feeling in season 6, his song that expresses the thing he hasn't been saying the whole time is that he's been her mentor for so long that the line got blurred, and now he's basically her dad. And if he wants her to like really step up and be a full human being, he has to go away, or else she's gonna default to him having the answers all the time, like most people do with parents. Which is some really nice, heartbreaking shit. And they pull some jokes about it too as the series winds to an end, where it's just like he seems to come and go at the worst possible times, but it's exactly the kind of thing a mentor does, where they seem to just kind of fucking disappear when the person needs them most. Yeah, I love Giles. I love Anthony Stewart Head. He was my casting choice for a lot of comic book villains we've done on TV now. I wanted him to be Grand Admiral Thrawn. I wanted him to be Apocalypse in the X-Men movies. I wanted him to be fucking Doctor Doom. He's just a great actor, and he sells that darkness, but he also just sells like that really sweet, wholesome, have you had enough to eat kind of personality, and he's great.
For those playing the home game, that's 2 shots because he mentioned Buffy and Constantine.
Geeky gentleman drinking game. Now that's dangerous.
Shot every time I mention Buffy, Nietzsche, or Constantine.
Yeah, exactly. So that's 2 shots. You know, it's interesting hearing you describe a character that I've never heard of or seen, because I do like a lot of what you're saying. I love that he fulfills that kind of father role, because that is kind of interesting that from what Buffy I have seen, which is very little of the first season, it does make sense that any mentor figure she would have would almost need to be someone who can also help her with like that normal day-to-day shit that like all of us take for granted in a sense. He sounds like a super interesting character. I haven't seen the show long enough to meet him though.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like Buffy it's a commitment because it's 7 seasons and then 5 seasons of Angel, but I really feel like it's one of those things that's just worth it because it's so important to the way popular culture has been defined in the last 20 years. Giles is interesting for a lot of reasons because Joss Whedon's whole gimmick is that everything's a metaphor. Everything's a metaphor for the most benign possible thing. And Giles is just Dad. He's the person you hate because he's old and doesn't understand anything. He's a dinosaur. He doesn't understand technology. He won't get out and date. He's boring. He makes dad jokes. But then you like really sit down and talk to him and realize, oh shit, he was a kid too, and he was a wild kid, and he did some crazy shit, and he just kind of wants to look out for me. And then at some point you're like, oh, I can't depend on Dad to give me a loan or help me out anymore. At some point I just got to be my own person, and he won't be there. And that's the most heartbreaking point. And so few mentor characters, I feel like, ever get to that point with their student where the student has to like really reconcile and say, I want you here, but I don't need you here. And usually that choice is taken away from them because the mentor just fucking dies. But Giles is one of the only ones I can think of where he's like, he literally says, if it is in your best interest to not depend on me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for all of Steve's expertise on Buffy and for Matt's dipping his toe in it, I know nothing. I've seen... I remember, like, flipping through channels and, like, hit an episode of Buffy and watched about 3 minutes of it in which she was thrown into, like a pool where the swim team had been turned into creatures from the Black Lagoon. And she's like, so they're gonna eat me? And the coach who threw her in was like, well, no, but boys have other needs. And she's like, oh God, I don't want to sleep with the whole swim team. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So then I just flipped the channel. That's my entirety of Buffy knowledge. Did Giles show up in that episode, Steve?
Giles did actually show up in that episode. That is a season 1 episode called... Shit, what is it called? It's been a long time since I've seen it. It's called... God damn, I know exactly the episode you're talking about, too.
Well, Steve can't name the episode title within 10 seconds.
Fake fan.
Fake fanboy over here. He's probably just doing it to get ladies.
Yeah.
To get that sweet,
sweet Buffy pussy.
Ladies. Yeah.
On my Tinder profile, it does actually say that I can name every episode of Buffy if you just give me a very loose plot description.
Well, damn. So you're a fucking liar.
I am apparently a liar because
Steve Baxi is canceled.
No, it's a season 1 episode. It has to be season 1 or season 2, but most likely season 1 because season 1's the only season that like really kind of overtly goes into like the weird sexual humor in the 90s. And that episode, Xander actually also joins the swim team, and I feel like that's the beginning of some of the Xander Cordelia stuff. So it has to be either end of season 1 or start of season 2.
Okay, it's just funny. All right, so we'll go on to my number 3. Now I just kind of pumped out a list and I didn't really pay attention to order, so now I'm gonna make my number 3 choice live. Okay, so this is kind of a weird one because like I have a hard time considering this character a mentor, but they most definitely filled that role sometimes. It's impossible to say they don't, but they're not often like seen as just a mentor characters. So that's why they're kind of lower on my list. And that is Batman, Bruce Wayne. Because I mean, he is undeniably he's a mentor to every Robin, every member of the Bat family. He's a mentor to a lot of the like B and C list superhero community. You know, like the Batman Brave and the Bold does a great job of showing us of how many people like learn from Batman. You've got like Batman and the Outsiders. It's like the number of stories where Batman is teaching people things is something it's a very big part of the character. But at the same time, Batman is also more of a protagonist in a general sense. So you don't see him in that mentor role exclusively, like I feel a lot of these other characters are. And that's, I don't know, that's just, it's an interesting place, because you kind of get what Steve's talking about there with Giles, where it's like, oh yeah, he used to be like this, but now he's this thing. And it's like, you get that he is this, and he's also this. And it's just kind of the ultimate Batman thing to be the best at everything, right? So I mean, there's certainly other characters in the Batman lore I could have put on here. Like I could put Alfred or something if I really wanted to, or Lucius Fox or Ra's al Ghul or whatever. But I just think Batman is an interesting figure in that mentor role, because he's always learning so much, and he's so often shown to just be like wrong or in the wrong, or maybe he has a point but he went about it the wrong way, that I don't know, it creates a really fascinating portrayal of that figure of teacher and mentor and stuff.
Batman's a really good one, because you're right, he is kind of slept on in that way, because the 2000s have just kind of been plagued with paranoia. Bruce Wayne is a hopelessly unwell man that has no idea what's going on and is just basically become Big Brother, and I don't like that. I feel like Batman's a lot more complicated than that, and he is actually a pretty decently well put together person. He just makes mistakes, but Batman, part of what's really interesting about him as a mentor and as a father figure is that he never actively encourages anyone he teaches to be like him. He's a mentor in the best possible way, because he's trying to teach you how to be more like yourself. Robin is explicitly a Dick Grayson idea, and when he forgets that, he fucks up with Jason. Tim Drake's Robin is explicitly Tim's idea, same with all of the Batgirls and everyone else that comes into the fold. He trains them, he gives them his techniques and stuff, but the whole point of him is he gives you the tools and you learn how to use them your way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what was that bit in fucking Young Justice?
Yeah, that's like the best moment from Young Justice.
Yeah, when Wonder Woman's like, you indoctrinated him into crime fighting at age 13, why? So he would turn out just like you. And he's like, so he wouldn't. And it's like, I love that aspect of Batman. You even get that shit in Batman Forever, where he's trying to prevent these people from turning into just more of him, because he knows how much anger and pain and all that stuff, even in his most well put together moments, he's still that kind of damaged person because of the emotional trauma, and he's trying to be that guiding force that he didn't necessarily have outside of Alfred. And I think that's a really cool place for that character, especially while he is still working through his own various damages, depending on what level of damage you want to go with, depending on writer. But I do think that's a really interesting place for that character, and you get to kind of see the difference between the way Batman interacts with the people he's trying to mentor and the people he works with and the people he's just trying to scare the shit out of. So it's a cool way to show the different facets of him.
Yeah, and I like Batman stories where he fails. I think those tend to be some of his most interesting stories. And so, I really like the way that two of his failures kind of shook out. Because I think Jason Todd, despite how people feel about, Jason Todd being resurrected, I think that, when it started, it was a really good take, because it gotten kind of stale in the comic book community for a character comes back and then is just, they have maybe one arc of being kind of messed up, but then they're just back to their old role. Whereas when Jason Todd came back, and there was a good 5 to 7 years where he was undeniably a villain. It was until New 52 where Jason Todd really took the turn more toward anti-hero, and then eventually just got folded back into the Bat family. But you gotta remember, Under the Red Hood came out in 2005. So there was a good 5 to 7 years where Jason Todd was just a villain, and he worked really well in that role as just this failed student of Batman. And I really, really liked the dynamic that was created by that, because like you got all the fucking like movies where the hero has a mentor, and then the villain of the movie is like a former student who went down the wrong path, kind of thing. And that's like what Jason Todd turned into, and it was such a good dynamic. So I really like that. I mean, Steve, you mentioned the early 2000s stuff, and I actually do still really have a place in my heart for a lot of that, at least in some interpretations of it, or some moments of it. And one of the things I really, really liked was like the journey of Stephanie Brown and his failure of it in Stephanie Brown, of like, here was this girl, and he warned her and tried to guard her against getting into this, and she kept coming back. And so he finally said, all right, you're Robin, and here are the rules. You fuck up once, you're out. And she fucked up. And then he kicked her out, but she kept coming back, and then that's the thing that got her killed. Is Batman's like notorious for, not on my city, not on my streets, you're underqualified, kind of thing. And I thought it was really interesting to have Stephanie Brown fill that role of the person who doesn't listen. Because so often the story is like the dynamic tends to be the mentor tries to ward someone off, tries to warn someone away, tries to say, you're not ready for this. And then the story becomes about them like pushing through and showing their worth regardless, and persevering through that. And I thought it was just a really interesting direction to show, some people just aren't ready. Some people just aren't capable. And I that's why I always really enjoyed the Stephanie Brown death, honestly. So I found it interesting, and it was one of the things I liked about the Bat family expanding, where you could have those different paths, that not everyone needed to be a rousing success, and not everyone needed to succeed in the exact same ways. That you could have, some times where it went bad. I always found that to be really interesting, and to explore Batman as a mentor, but not necessarily a great one because of his own personal damage. I thought it's just a unique angle that you rarely get to see in other stories, and it's because of Batman's pretty unique role as both mentor and protagonist. Cool. Anything else to say on Batman as a mentor? I mean, we could go on about Batman all night, probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the issue. It's just there's too much to say about Batman.
Batman's cool.
I like Batman. People should read Batman comics.
Oh, yeah, I second that.
Okay, Matt, what's your number 2?
So for my number 2, I knew I wanted to go with a mentor from a video game, just because that feels very on brand for me. And I had it on lock, and I was like, this is who I'm going to do. And that person is now my honorable mention, because I was talking to my wife Carly, and we were kind of going through like some mentors from video games, and she's like, well, what about this person? And I was just like, oh my god, of course, how did I not think of that? So of course my number 2 is going to be Kreia from Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Sith Lords. Fucking love Kreia, because she's kind of a subversion of the mentor trope. She is the mentor who does find the player character, the exile, to be someone worth investing time into. Kreia does clearly think that you are capable of a lot, but she is also setting you up to fail no matter what you do, because she is really playing at her own game that you really can only guess at as the plot nears its end, and you slowly begin to realize that Kreia has been kind of playing you the whole time, but at the same time you and she share this like connection, this force bond, and so she's very fascinating to me, and people like to joke that like no matter what you do, because KOTOR as Knights of the Republic 2 has this like influence system, and like when you say certain things or do certain things, characters in your party will either gain or lose influence with you. and Kreia is kind of notorious for like no matter what you do, she will always find a way to disapprove. I remember there's like a specific moment on Nar Shaddaa when a beggar like comes up and asks you for money, and no matter what you say to them, Kreia will find a way to disapprove of it, and Kreia will explain to you that choice you made is going to have consequences, whether or not you intended it to or not. And so she's just this very interesting role of just this mentor who is trying to teach you, but at the same time, she is very much playing at her own thing, so she's kind of playing you the whole time as well. Steve, I assume you've played KOTOR, right?
Yeah. No, I love KOTOR too, and I love KOTOR. Kreia's fun because part of what's cool about some of this stuff is it never kind of gets touched again in Star Wars fiction. So like, you know Kreia from KOTOR 2, and that's kind of about it, which is good because it kind of gives her her own little universe and her own little context to play in. I remember when I was playing that game for the first time, like it did feel legitimately kind of frustrating, and almost like it was rigged, where it felt like I couldn't do anything to like make her happy. And then you get to the end and you realize, oh shit, that's the point.
That set the tone for every relationship Steve would.
He did, honestly, because 2004 Steve was straight up not having a good time. But that's really fun. I like her design a lot. I feel like she's understated and really cool. I feel like she would make it into a movie super well. But I love just her in the game, and I love her interactions. She's that same sort of line as Batman is, where I feel like she's a mentor character technically, but honestly, she's just a really cool fucking character on her own, and I just want more of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you played either of the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic games?
Nah.
Nah.
Nah, I hear they suck. I hear just all the time people are talking about, oh, KOTOR sucks. KOTOR's the worst. Fuck KOTOR. That's all I ever hear about those games, man.
When I first got Carly to play through KOTOR, because she got into Star Wars through Force Awakens and like the sequel trilogy, that was her like big gateway into Star Wars, and now she's like knows more about the First Order than like anyone I've ever met. When I got her to sit down and play through KOTOR 1, I didn't realize that like a couple years before in our relationship, or like a year before in our relationship, I had already spoiled the big spoiler for KOTOR, just because I assumed it wasn't something she was interested in playing. So I'm sitting there when we get to the scene where it's revealed, and I'm just like, yeah, and then she just does not react to the scene at all, and I'm just like, what? And she's like, you already told me what happens like a year ago. Like, oh no.
See, this is why you don't fucking spoil Star Wars stuff, people. Like right here, you did it to yourself.
Go. Okay.
You're the Luke Skywalker in the hallway guy. You're the fucking one that told me Kanan died. You son of a bitch.
I'm sorry.
Not gonna lie, Star Wars is really hard to talk about without spoiling the fuck out of it, though.
It is, but yeah, Kreia's great. The performance is phenomenal, which is something that's really cool. Because like back in that time, you know, like really high quality voice acting in video games was still kind of not quite the norm yet. Mm-hmm. And the KOTOR games, you know, being two pretty successful big BioWare RPGs. Well, one was made by BioWare. The sequel, the much better one, was made by Obsidian. And like the performances just knock it out of the park. Kreia is a phenomenally well acted and well written character. You know, the simple like kind of, she's this older woman who's blind, and you know that the almost sort of creepy vibe she gives off. I mean, when you first meet her, you think she's just like a corpse in like a medical facility, and then she like just sits up and looks at you and starts talking to you, and it's like really fucking creepy. So she's a great character, and I love her. And play KOTOR 2, even though we've just spoiled a lot of it. But play KOTOR 2. Like all of it. We just spoiled like all of it.
What can you do? It's fucking Star
Play
Wars
KOTOR
spoilers,
1.
man.
Start there. You'll forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, play KOTOR 1. The earth-shattering revelations will shake the KOTOR 2 spoilers from your head, and then you can play KOTOR 2.
I can't believe he was revving the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's what like all the Star Wars things are chasing is just that Vader reveal, you know?
Yeah.
And so just everything's like, because every Star Wars movie or every Star Wars media tries to have like that big, the whole time kind of reveal anymore. It's funny to me. Anyway, all right. Steve, what's your number 2?
My number 2, I went slightly off-brand because I honestly don't even know what where this fits in my internet persona, but I went for an anime because this is actually one of my favorite animes. It's my favorite shonen of all time, and I love this character. My number 2 is Genkai from Yu Yu Hakusho. Genkai is the mentor figure that shows up in the second arc of Yu Yu Hakusho, where basically the premise is she is this amazingly powerful woman who's world-renowned and is part of this group of very elitely trained and skilled psychics. She developed this technique called the Spirit Wave. She's been around for like fucking ever. She's basically Yoda for this universe. And in the second arc, Yusuke gets sent over to her place because she's holding a tournament. Because she thinks she's going to die soon, and she wants to pick a student to inherit her technique. And so the whole premise is basically just, you need to go and win and learn it just in case someone bad shows up and kills her and gets the technique instead. And lo and behold, someone bad does show up, and they fight, yada, yada, yada. But basically, Genkai goes from showing up as just kind of like this snarky old lady in the beginning of that arc, to being a constant presence in the whole show, and a lot like Giles, kind of being like a parental figure for Yusuke throughout the show. Yu Yu Hakusho is really interesting in shonen context, especially now, because it's an older one, where it's all about the tropes of that genre before we could really even talk about them as tropes. It's all about toxic masculinity. It's all about this weirdness about kids fighting each other and how horrifying that is. It's all about people feeling neglected, and so they harm themselves constantly to prove themselves. And I mean, it's not even like me saying this now as a social justice warrior on the internet in 2021. It's like literally you watch the scene where Yusuke talks to Toguro in their last fight, and he literally says almost verbatim that he respected Toguro because he was a big, strong man and no one could tell him what to do, and he missed having that kind of masculine influence in his life, and now he realizes that desire was a bad thing. Like, he literally says that. That's the point of the whole show. And it's fitting that, like, his biggest enemy is, like, this big, overly masculine dude, while his mentor is this tiny old lady who, like, teaches him that his biggest power and his most important asset is the thing he's constantly taught to avoid, which is his vulnerability and his feelings. Genkai's whole thing in the series is to teach Yusuke to say having feelings is not a bad thing. It does not make you weaker. It, in fact, does the exact opposite. It makes you stronger. And the more you try and chase that rabbit of being this strong, manly man to save the day, like you wish you had as a kid, the weaker you're going to be, and the less aware you'll be of your own potential. And so Genkai becomes like this really, really direct analog for a lot of what people are feeling, and she's like, she holds no shits back. Like, she meets this kid once and immediately calls him out on his bullshit and tells him what he needs to do. And like, she's got the classic cliche anime training where like they're climbing up a cliff and he gets stuck, so she jumps down and beats the shit out of him and then tells him to keep climbing. There's a moment in her training where like she calls him out in a montage flashback for basically running away every time things gets hard, and so he just tries to fucking kill her, and she dodges it and beats him up and then just makes fun of him for trying to give up after he clearly had all that power that could have killed her. It's fucking great. It's this really interesting relationship where it's like she just keeps poking the bear because it's not really a bear, it's just a little fluffy teddy bear. And it's honest, and again, not metaphor. He has a spirit animal in the show who is literally a fluffy teddy bear that everyone thought was going to be a giant monster. So it's great. That show, a lot like Buffy, is where like the metaphors are there, but they're all so literal. You're an idiot for missing them if you miss them. But Genkai is great. She dies at the end of the Dark Tournament arc and then gets brought back to life for no good reason, which sucks and kind of ruins a lot of it. But she's a great mentor figure. She, as a kid, I think was the first time I saw a female character on TV that like really felt like this whole fully realized person with a complex backstory, that lived a life and was not just an archetype and was not used purely for the main character's character development and was not purely relegated to a motherly role. And she has those moments. There were flashbacks when she's younger and involved with the main bad guy. There were things about her aging and not looking as beautiful as she once did. There's this great scene where like Yusuke is in a great amount of pain because he's going through this worst part of her training, and she tries to stop the test because she's sad that he's this little kid trying to take on something that is clearly going to destroy him. And he refuses, and he tries to keep going, which is the thing I love in mentor tropes, where the student has to realize the mentor's concern is the thing holding them back, not pushing them forward anymore. Genkai's great. She's fantastic. I love her. I wish she was my mom.
Oh man, fucking spoilers for a nearly 3-decade-old anime.
I know, right? If you haven't watched Yu Yu Hakusho, you need to watch Yu Yu Hakusho. It is undoubtedly the best shonen ever.
I caught it on like Toonami or Adult Swim or whatever it was, and I just saw like episodes out of context. But I looked at, while you were talking, I actually looked up the character, and I just got hit with like a wave of like, oh yeah, no, I've seen this person before. Could not talk about the show or the character in any way, but I like her pink hair.
The Vegeta guy is Hiei, right? Hiei?
Yes, Hiei is basically the Vegeta stand-in.
I saw a really funny meme where someone was like, drew Tien and Vegeta doing the fusion dance, and then they just formed Hiei. I really like that joke.
I mean, that's literally what they are. It's kind of great. Hiei is a lot of fun too. Everyone in that show is basically just dealing with some form of toxic masculinity that they need to overcome, and Hiei is basically like, let's take all the worst things about Vegeta as an archetype and try to give them a humanity.
Mm-hmm. What's the deal with like Hiei's boyfriend or whatever in that show? The guy with the fucking pink suit and the hairs. What's his?
He's Kurama. He's basically an age-old fox demon who gets injured, and so he basically goes into hiding by possessing a woman who's pregnant and reincarnates himself as a little kid so he has time to heal. And so by the time you catch up on the show, he's like 16 years old and he's kind of grown up and he's lost a lot of his power, but he's trying to age back up. Kurama is the like most well-adjusted character in the whole series, and his whole thing is that he is a very, very old, wise man in a very young body. And so you get to see all of the angry teenagers doing angry teenage things while being accompanied by someone that basically calls them out on their bullshit in a very kind way.
Okay. No, it's just interesting because you mentioned like the toxic masculinity thing. I'm like, I remember him being like very, like I remember watching it with friends and be like, man, that one's gay. And just shit like that. So it's kind of just interesting sticking out in my head. I haven't watched Yu Yu Hakusho since fucking middle school. I remember watching an episode with I think it was during that tournament you're talking about where they're doing the what they call it, the knife edge death battle or something like that. And I was watching that with my dad, and then it just like, you know, it does the classic anime thing where it ends the episode on a cliffhanger. And my dad's like, oh, I hate this shit.
And Knife Edge Mats is the end of the first round in Dark Tournament. It's fucking great.
Yeah, my dad got a little too into the anime. It was kind of funny. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Yu Yu Hakusho is one of those things that I'm reminded of a lot. I see it around a lot, but I've still never gone back to it. Okay, sorry, I got nothing else to contribute on that character though. I'm sorry. All right, so my number 2 then.
Go for it.
Yep.
Okay, let's see here. Consult the list. Where do I want to put 2? Fuck it, we just talked to anime. In a move that I'm sure will shock literally all of you. I'm gonna pick an anime mentor. I'm gonna pick Master Roshi from Dragon Ball.
Yeah, I saw that coming.
Yeah,
I knew it.
Yeah.
I actually can talk vaguely intelligently about this one. Yay!
Yeah, I don't know. Like, Roshi's an interesting character who, it's funny because, like, he just got, or not just, but, like, recently he was put in Dragon Ball FighterZ. And there was, like, it's funny to me because Roshi's become a very controversial character in modern times because he's the, like, wise old mentor figure, but Toriyama being Toriyama, like, gives each character a gag, a joke, and so instead of just being the wise old hermit mentor, he's also a perv. He's also just a pervert, really, there's no other way to say it. He spies on Bulma going to the bathroom. He's constantly trying to cop a feel on launch and stuff, and, like, that's his thing. And it's made him a controversial figure as of late because, yeah, sexual predation is a bad thing. And I don't know, it's interesting, and I've certainly questioned whether I should like Roshi as much as I do. And ultimately, I'm going to kind of be unapologetic in my love for Roshi with all the pervy, kind of uncomfortable stuff included, because I think it is one of those things where you definitely wouldn't be able to get away with doing it today, but it does work within its own context. He is a pervert, and as he does commit acts of sexual predation, but it, like, never works for him. It's almost like a Looney Tunes level gag with him. Like, every time he goes for it, he just gets blasted, and it's so funny that, you got Bulma and Launch, who are not martial artists and who can't blow up the moon with their hand lasers, can constantly beat the shit out of Roshi for all his pervy stuff. I quite like the gag in that context. But on a more serious level, Roshi he's got, like, he's every old master in every kung fu movie, man. It's so good. I fucking love it. Just all the great things. I love, I think my favorite arc with Roshi, my favorite Roshi moment, is the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament, 23rd or 22nd, whichever one, the one that Tien ends up winning. I really like, because Tien starts that saga as the villain. And he's not much of a villain, but he is the villain of that saga. And in his fight with Roshi's able to turn him from that path. So he takes on yet another student in the middle of all that. Turns Tien away from this self-destructive, very toxic past his master has put him on. And puts him in the path of good, of righteousness. And I just love the moment where he does it all because he's so sure that Tien is so sure that he won't go down Roshi's path. He's destined to be an assassin, and Roshi realizes that he's done enough to get him away from that, and that fighting Goku will solidify it for him. And so he just leaves the ring in the middle of the fight, and it's just such a great moment. He just walks to the edge of the ring and he says, "My season has ended, a new one begins," and he just jumps out of the ring. And I fucking adore that so much. Steve, to your earlier point about the idea of the mentor character kind of determining when someone doesn't need them, Roshi does that constantly. Like, it's interesting because Roshi's two main students. Of course, Tien learns from him, and Chaozu learns from him, and everyone learns something from Roshi eventually. But Roshi's two main students of Goku and Krillin are such an interesting example because right away, after that first tournament, Roshi's like, "Yeah, I have nothing else to teach you." everything you need to know you've learned. And I think he's bullshitting just a little bit because he damn sure didn't teach them the surprise lightning attack, but whatever. But like, I have nothing left to teach you. It's time for you to go strike out on your own, and you've already surpassed me. And that's Roshi's kind of mantra throughout the whole of Dragon Ball. And it's not completely true, but it's very interesting to see the paths that his two students went down. Because Krillin doesn't believe him and keeps coming back to try to learn more and more and more and keep getting training from Roshi. That's like Krillin's thing is, oh no, that old Master Roshi, he's still got a whole lot left. You just gotta stick around. And Goku goes off on his own. And that is why Goku becomes fully the superior martial artist. It has very little to do with the whole Saiyan biology, yada yada. Because even before that's like established in canon, Goku was surpassing everyone. He was always 10 steps ahead of everybody else. And it's because he took Roshi's lessons to heart and then learned to go beyond what Roshi had ever learned. I love the scene with Goku training with Korin, and he finds out that Master Roshi had trained with Korin. He's like, really? How long did it take my master to get that pot from you? And Korin holds up 3 fingers. He's like, 3 minutes? No, it took him 3 years. It's just like the biggest oh shit moment, and then that like hypes it up so much more when Goku manages to do it in a couple days. I love that shit, man. It's so good, and it's so well reflected. I also even, for all his faults, I even like what Dragon Ball Super does with Roshi. Is he's the master, and Goku is fully and 100% moved beyond him, but that doesn't mean he learned every single little detail, and so you get that really good moment in Dragon Ball Super. It's in the anime and it's done okay, but it's his character is handled so much better in the manga, where Goku's kind of gone down this path throughout all of Z and up to that point in Super of chasing power, chasing that next transformation or that next ultimate technique. And he kind of learned that from getting too close to Vegeta, too close to Frieza, too close to that type of fighter. And that's not the Turtle Hermit way. And so it's learning about being the best that you can be and not getting caught up just in power. And so it's Roshi teaching him that allows Goku to unlock Ultra Instinct. So again, it's just that it's so good because he's there when you absolutely need him, but he's smart enough to teach you not to need him. I really, really enjoyed that about Roshi's character.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot to add to that. That was actually really comprehensive. Because I don't know Dragon Ball as well as you, maybe not even as well as Steve. I actually don't know how much Steve knows Dragon Ball, but I don't know as much about Dragon Ball as probably anyone else on Geeky Gentlemen. But I do pretty viscerally remember. I mean, I know most of Roshi's time as a mentor is spent in Dragon Ball, not so much in Dragon Ball Z. At least that's my memory. Mm-hmm. And he also has that one trope that I always love in mentors of the really unassuming mentor who can suddenly turn and show just how fucking powerful they are. I love the visual sort of sight gag of Roshi being this old ass man who can then shrug off the turtle shell and the shirt and just buff out like crazy. And that's almost a cliche, and I love it every time I see it. And with Roshi, it just works so well because the way he's written, the way he's performed, you really just buy that he's this weird old dude. So it's cool to see him almost break character and get serious occasionally, and it adds those layers to him. Not a lot to add as far as what he brings to the story as a mentor, but just absolutely character. I always enjoyed growing up watching Dragon Ball.
I also this is the classic Roshi example, but I love the first tournament Goku enters, and Roshi enters purely with the intent of beating him so that Goku learns to never settle and to never think he is always the best. that's great, and that becomes his baseline lesson for the rest of the entire series. So of fucking course he does a really good job. This didn't make my list, but you talking about Roshi actually brought up Goku, because I almost put Goku on my list, and I think a large reason why Goku ends up the way he does and why he would be such a good teacher is because so much of what he gets he learns from Master Roshi. Master Roshi is, like you said, all of those old master cliches, but he's just kind of his own personality, and he's rolled into them into one. He does the Karate Kid thing of like weird training montages that wouldn't actually make you any stronger. He's got that quirky Yoda personality where he's very unassuming at first. He's like the broad range of all of them, but he still kind of manages to form out his own identity. And he's honestly always useful. And I mean, that's the biggest problem with Dragon Ball as a franchise overall, is that like how useful you are kind of begins to ebb and flow depending on what point in the series you get to. But Roshi is always useful, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, Steve, what are your thoughts on the whole discussion of Roshi's trope with the whole pervert gag and stuff?
So I get that it's a different time, and so I don't like hold it against the show. I mean, I think it's worth talking about it with like an asterisk next to it and just saying like, hey, this is a thing in the show, and it's specifically bad because the brunt of it for so much of Dragon Ball is Bulma, who is underaged, which is even worse. And so like that needs to be put in somewhere, and I think the conversation definitely has to be had about like, why is this funny? Why is this a thing we do? Why was this ever okay? But that's not Dragon Ball's fault. It's just kind of playing into what was already kind of there, and you just have to be honest about explaining that. If someone is annoyed and can't watch the show because of that, I 100% understand and do not hold it against them. I have shown Dragon Ball to people, and when they get to Master Roshi, they can't keep watching, and I think that's a completely valid response.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where usually when it's comedy, when it's played for comedy, even if it's very inappropriate, I tend to give things a little bit more rope, I guess, just tends to be my attitude toward things. I don't know. And I guess it depends on where the laughs are coming from. You know, I don't think you're ever like laughing at the girls for getting attacked in this way or whatever. You know, I think the laugh is 100% at Roshi being such an idiot for all of it, or Roshi being so ridiculous.
I think part of it for me though is also just, even as a kid, I never found all that really funny, because like Dragon Ball is in that weird age bracket for me where I watched it when I was really, really young, and so like I had no idea why the sexual thing was a joke. And then I got older and didn't watch Dragon Ball and started like going to middle school and high school and getting laid and shit and reading anime and manga that was all about sexual things, and then watching a lot of Buffy and Angel, which is all about sexual tensions and stuff. And then I went back to Dragon Ball after the fact, and so like there was this no middle period of exploring the sexuality of Dragon Ball as it's written. It was always just, this is a complete boy thing where people beat each other up, and then jump ship 10 years later and it's, oh, this is actually really, really complicated.
Fair enough. I don't know. It's one of those things where I tend to give stuff like that a little bit more rope, but just depending on where I feel the comedy's coming from. So it's never bothered me, but it's been interesting to hear people talk about it. I think I agree with you. I wouldn't fault anyone for just not being able to tolerate it, not being able to get through it. But I would say that I do think it is worth trying to tolerate, and worth trying to get through, and worth trying to see as, I guess, see as intended, as opposed to see it in strictly a modern context.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think it is worth it. I enjoy the series. It doesn't bother me, but if it bothers other people, I can see why.
Mm-hmm. All right. Matt, we're on to your honorable mention, yes?
Yeah, my honorable mention. Again, my honorable mention was originally my number 2. And then when Carly helped me think of Kreia, I decided to bump him down. But my honorable mention is going to be Sully from Uncharted. I am actually a really big fan of the Uncharted game series, which is kind of an unpopular opinion for like people who are more into the indie game scene and stuff like that. And I love that scene. I love that whole indie game scene as well. But no, Uncharted's actually good, actually, and I quite enjoy the games. And I think Sullivan or Sully is a really interesting character because, you know, Nathan Drake is essentially an Indiana Jones character, but you know, when we first meet Indiana Jones, he's a little bit later in his life than Nathan Drake is. You know, he's a professor, he's a doctor, he's all these things. Nathan is just like this like late 20s dude who just knows a lot of history and is really passionate about finding you know, the history of his own ancestors and things like that. And Sully is this sort of scoundrel Han Solo-esque type character, and he's the type of person who very immediately views Nathan as just way better than he could ever be as a human being, and it's almost him trying to guide Nathan away from just turning out like him and trying to also, I think in a way, make something more of himself by being a guiding light for this kid, because he meets Nathan when Nathan's pretty young, and they kind of go on some misadventures, and he really just kind of falls in love with the kid, and they you know, just continue going on treasure hunting, and Sully's mind is always on the treasure, it's always on the materials, it's always on getting rich and things like that, but at the same time he has this sort of fatherly relationship with Nathan that's really interesting to see play out. And I know in the first Uncharted, you even think that he's maybe dead. I haven't played them in a while. And so he's a really fun character, and I like him throughout the whole thing. I guess it's a good thing I didn't pick him as my second because I don't have a ton of deep things to say about him.
Sully came to mind for me too. I love the Uncharted games. I still think they're really, really good.
I do too.
I'm not like a pro gamer or anything, so I don't fucking know what.
You don't even know what fucking the appeal of crazy high FPSs is, Steve. So
no, I don't. I just figured the human eye can only see so many frames per second, and that's kind of where we need to stop. But apparently not.
Oh my God, Steve, you're so wrong, and let me explain to you why in this 12-part video essay.
But no, I enjoy Sully. I love the Uncharted games. I don't have a ton to say about him either, aside from the fact that I think of that archetype that you see show up in video games all over the place, he's easily become the most popular modern version, and I think he's kind of iconic in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love him.
It's been a long time since I played the Uncharted games, and I never got past 2. So I am, you know, woefully uninformed. But I remember liking the character. I thought he was interesting. He betrays you in the first game, right? Like, there's a whole section where it's like, you sold us.
Well, it's like a fake out type thing, if I remember correctly. But again, it's been a while, so I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I played specifically the first one.
Fair enough. No, I don't know. I like that premise. I like that kind of. I like the trope of the guy that's like you're supposed to be able to trust, and then even him kind of thing can be fun. Again, I think Sully's an interesting example of not necessarily a failed mentor, but a very flawed mentor. Is kind of just, it's interesting to get those. So I like stuff like that. All right.
Yeah.
Steve, your honorable mention?
We already kind of touched on it, but it was going to be Goku.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Goku is a lot of things, but I think a lot like the Batman conversation. At the end of the day, he's just a really, really good teacher, and my favorite Goku moments are the ones where it's almost like you're training in the moment. The final episodes of Z and the final chapters of Dragon Ball, where he's like helping Oob understand his power more as they fight, is some of my favorite shit, and I love it, and I wish we could get more of it.
Yeah, I'm still always disappointed that GT just decided to skip Oob entirely and go with the more interesting idea of space adventure for reasons, instead of just fucking let us see Goku as a mentor, please.
Also, Goku is socially incompetent but a genius fighter, especially when his back's against the wall, and he makes his smartest plays when he knows he's going to lose, and he's just trying to figure it out. And so when he does stuff like Full Power Super Saiyan in the Cell Saga, where it's just like the transformation eats up too much power, so we're going to stay in this form, and we're going to learn to let our bodies tolerate it, and then just use all of our spare energy to fight. That's the kind of cool shit you'd want to see a martial arts mentor teach, and he never really gets the chance to do it.
And I mean, maybe that's the reason. It's because Toriyama never really focused on the training parts. He always skipped it and did the action bits. So like, maybe that's why. But goddamn, yeah, if you just could have seen, that's where the manga should go. Just fucking Goku training Oop should just be the shit. Because, like, every week could be a different, lesson / battle / arc. Ah, it'd be so good. I love it. I love it to death. Yeah, it's good shit. Alright, so then my honorable mention. Shit. Okay. I'm gonna go for it as my honorable mention because I'm almost sure it's gonna be someone else's number one.
Oh man.
So I'm gonna do it this way because my number one's gonna be weird. Yoda?
Not my number one?
Not my number one.
What the fuck?
I mean, Yoda's hype. I love Yoda, but not my number one.
I mean, it's
Yoda,
just...
I like Yoda. Every mentor scene Yoda is given, I think, is a good mentor scene. I just don't think mentoring is enough of Yoda's character in the whole of his EU history, and so I didn't think about it.
No, you're crazy. You're crazy. This is why the EU is trash, both the new and the old. The EU can go suck a billion star systems.
I grant
dicks.
the scene in Last Jedi where he shows up is like one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen in a movie theater. I fucking love it. Yoda as a teacher is amazing and iconic and a treasure. I just don't think he has enough scenes where he does that, and so I just didn't think to do it.
It's all of his scenes in the original movie and in the sequel trilogy.
Which is not a lot in Star Wars quantity, is all I'm saying.
No, it is. It is, because the EU is fucking garbage and can be thrown in the goddamn trash. That's why. Fucking stupid-ass EU bullshit. Oh, Yoda's not really a mentor in the majority of his appearances. Get the fuck out of here. He's introduced... When fucking Lucas wrote the trilogy and set up Luke's journey to be the hero's journey, the movie, and fucking Yoda is created to be the mentor figure. So get the fuck out of here. Yoda's not a mentor. You're just fucking crazy.
I love Yoda as a mentor, though. He's great.
Yeah.
His scenes with Luke are fantastic. The way he purposefully is testing Luke's patience, and that transition that Frank Oz is able to do from this jovial fucking Muppet ass to just suddenly like, the boy has no patience, and I'm just like, oh, it's like fucking chilling. It's so good. Yoda's great, and he, by the time you get to episode 5, you can even without having watched the prequels, even if you're just watching them in release order, you feel the weight of his past and of even his failures on him as he reluctantly starts this journey again, and he's nervous as to what this will bring, and I love that. It's great.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I fucking love Yoda as a teacher. I mean, I think you could qualify him still as a teacher in the prequels in a different way. I mean, there's that... Still, one of my favorite prequel scenes is Yoda teaching the younglings. I fucking adore that scene. It's so cute. But, like, just at the same time, there's that, and then there's, like, the other really good Yoda moment for me from the prequels is the scene in Phantom Menace where he's trying to, analyze young Anakin, and he calls it, and they all call it, but they don't stick with their gut, and that's kind of the failure of the Jedi at the time. But like, calls it, he's like, pain leads to anger leads to like a fucking fucking love that shit. That line is so goddamn good, and it perfectly analyzes and summarizes the character and the journey that Anakin will go through. And then again, I find it interesting when the mentor characters fail, because Yoda is this great master of the Force, and if anyone can stop the Empire in its infancy, it has to be Yoda. He's the head of the Jedi Order and everything, and he fails, and he realizes he fails. He gives it his all. He doesn't hold anything back, and he loses. I love the implications of that, and the way that reflects on him, and how it sets him up by the time you get to Empire, and you just have Yoda left in this place of like, I'm looking for Yoda. He is a great warrior. War does not make one great. So many good lines. I fucking love Yoda. Yoda's the best. Yoda's the best mentor ever. He's created to be a mentor. If the EU does not display Yoda as a mentor, then I have no problem burning every EU book in existence. I fucking hate the EU so much.
God damn. Strong words. I love it.
It's just every time I find something out about the EU, I just like cringe at it and get very annoyed.
I feel like that's a good chunk of it, but yeah. I mean, not all of it for sure, but yeah, I hear you there. But yeah.
Oh, man. That's funny, Steve. I love you, Steve. God damn, that's funny.
I mean, to the end of my days, I still think one of the greatest lines ever written in all of fiction is when Yoda is in Last Jedi, and he's like, "We are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters." I'm like, shit, that makes me want to cry. I fucking love it.
It's so good. It's so good. Like
So I think I mentioned this somewhere before. But Gabe Lowe's wife helped me with this. But my best friend's birthday last year, due to COVID, his sensei in the martial arts died. And so like this dude who's been training my best friend in martial arts and made him the man he is for like 10 fucking years, and he just dies. And so for his birthday present, I got Gabe to make him a drawing of him, his old sensei, and Yoda giving him that line. And I felt like that was like the most perfect statement I could make, not because it's necessarily the best thing you could do in that situation, but that's the only thing I could think of. The only way I could like even reconcile what was going on is that Yoda line.
Yeah, fucking love it. It's so good.
I love Yoda. He's great.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't think of him as a mentor
No, it's just
I'm saying,
the
like, there's
sentence.
just not enough there for me to justify saying it.
That sentence infuriates me so much. Like, just the notion that some fucker in his EU comics and novelizations and cereal boxes fucking sat there. It's like, well, I'm gonna do a cool Yoda scene, but he's not gonna be a teacher in it. He's just gonna be little green fucking whatever guy. Ugh. That pisses me off so much more than any CGI flip Yoda could possibly do.
Yeah. I guess I'll jump into my number one, which, okay, we'll see if anyone else's this is their number one.
I guarantee you do not have my number one.
There was no question about who would be number one for me, and that is Uncle Iroh.
Dude, the same.
Yes.
Yes. That was my number one from the get-go.
Yes. No one else could even come close. All right, so Steve and I are gonna wax lyrical about Uncle Iroh now.
I watched Avatar recently.
All three of us are gonna wax lyrical about Uncle Iroh now. I love Uncle Iroh more than it's possible to love a real person. No, I really like Uncle Iroh a lot. He's a phenomenal character. Zuko's story is, to me, the emotional core of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And the way that Iroh's personal journey of trying to help Zuko find what he's looking for, not in the sense of finding the Avatar, but finding that purpose and that honor he feels he's lost. It's so fascinating to me, and it's really interesting too, because Iroh does become a character who's tired of the war, and he's pretty much tired of the war by the time we meet him. But he is still a Fire Nation soldier. He is still a villain for the beginning of the show because he believes in his duty and his honor. But he also does see the lives lost, and I love the way that he has this reverence for the other nations, how he teaches Zuko to redirect lightning because he knows techniques from waterbenders. He has this appreciation even when he was a general leading the siege on Ba Sing Se. He's got this appreciation for what the Earth Kingdom was able to accomplish. And I love that just in a character, and then bringing that over to him as a mentor, as someone who Zuko often sees as too laid back, too uncaring, and it's simply because Iroh has found more of a peace with himself than Zuko has. And yeah, when he hugs him in kind of the near the end there, and they have that exchange where he says, you were lost, and I always wanted you to come back or whatever. That makes me tear up like every time. I've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender probably a dozen times through, and their big reunion in the finale makes me tear up every time. I mean, just bravo.
Dude,
10 out of 10.
In that scene where Zuko gets the hug and he doesn't understand, and he's like, how could you forgive me so easily? And Iroh he's just fucking great. Everything about Iroh is so fucking good, because Iroh's whole thing from the very beginning is that he lost one son to the war that the Fire Nation started, and Zuko is an opportunity to try and rectify some of that. And he always treats Zuko like a son. He always treats him as someone that deserves love and respect, and he doesn't correct him almost ever. He tells him his opinion. He lets Zuko does what he wants, and he reaches a breaking point by the end of season 2 where he's like, you need to decide what you want to be. But he never gives Zuko the option. He never says, you should go do this, I believe this. He gives Zuko questions over and over again that are questions he just does not want to answer. And it's just such great inner turmoil, and I love the way Zuko kind of has to wrestle with it. But I love how all of it always just comes from that place of love, where Iroh at the end of the day just wants Zuko to be happy regardless of what he's doing, and he knows his path is not one that's going to lead him to that eternal happiness the way he wants for him. Every bit of advice Iroh gives is fucking spot on and perfect. There is not a single line of dialogue that character was given that was ever fucking wrong, and I love it. Ever since I saw Avatar: The Last Airbender the first time when it was airing, I basically rewatched it every year, every summer. It's just one of those shows where every fall I will rewatch Buffy and Angel, and every summer I will rewatch Avatar: The Last Airbender. I fucking adore that show. It is a lot. I just fucking adore Iroh for so many reasons, and he was easily my number one, because I don't think a mentor figure ever sort of challenges the emotional well-being of the person they're teaching better than Iroh does. Everyone's got that line, that quip, that moment where it's like, okay, here's what you need to do. Like Genkai has the moment where she tells Yusuke, you think your feelings make you weak, but they don't. They make you stronger. You got the thing with Giles where he at some point he's like, you need to stand on your own 2 feet. You can't depend on me. Yoda's got the whole do or do not. There is no trial. Everyone's got the line of this is the lesson you need to learn. Iroh has just got this perfect disposition all the way through, where his questions and his answers and his guidance are not the things that need to be done. They are not morality plays. They are not goals. They're not progress in any sense of the word. They are always just, what do you feel, and are you being honest with yourself when you say that? And every time he asks you a question, it makes you angry, because you want to kind of make him proud, and you can't, because you're not being honest with yourself. Zuko's whole arc is to not deny what he really feels. And Iroh's whole thing is just to poke at him until he finally lets the floodgates out, and it's fucking beautiful. And I love it. And there's never been a mentor figure written anywhere near as well as fucking Uncle Iroh.
I like Iroh quite a bit. He is, I think, the like breakout character from Avatar. Oddly enough, like I think he's the one that everyone gravitates toward, because he has a really interesting role in the series. And honestly, I'm surprised they don't kill him. Like, there's several points where you really, really think they're going to. And it's kind of shocking. You guys keep talking about the scenes where like he keeps giving and giving and giving to Zuko. I think the scene that sticks out the most to me for Iroh that makes him very, very interesting as a mentor character is the scene where Iroh is in prison and Zuko has everything that he's ever wanted. I really, really like their dynamic at that point, because that is when their relationship is at its absolute worst. Because that's like late season 3, if not early season 4. That'd be late season 3, right? It's hard. It's hard.
It only has 3 seasons.
Oh,
It's beginning
right.
of season 3. He gets arrested at the end of season 2, and then he's in prison for the start of season 3.
You're right.
And Zuko visits him for most of it until the halfway point when he discovers Avatar Roku is his grandfather.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, that's why I was having trouble. I couldn't. For some reason, I thought there were 4. Anyway. I really like the scene where he really confronts him about everything, and he just keeps going to visit him, and visit him, and visit him. And the thing is, Zuko at the beginning of season 3 has everything he would have wanted at the beginning of season 1, and he's not happy about it, and he wants to be. He's like so close, and he keeps looking at Iroh, and even I just love their dynamic, because even though Iroh's in a prison and Zuko is literally living as the prince that he is meant to be, Zuko's the one who's not happy. Iroh is doing fine because he's accepted his circumstances. Iroh has reached that Zen state kind of thing, and so he's not in love with the idea of being in prison, but he's less of a prisoner in a literal jail cell than Zuko is living in a castle. And I adore that dynamic of just how mad Zuko is at him in that moment, because he's projecting so much. I really,
Part of what
really like
I
that.
love in that example specifically, because my favorite episode of the series is actually the one where he visits him in the jail and he's figuring out the history about his grandparent being Avatar Roku. There's a lot of great episodes in season 4, but or season 3, but I especially love that one partly because of what you're saying, because of the framing. Because if you watch that episode carefully, every time Zuko is talking, you're looking into the cameras inside the jail cell looking out, so it looks like Zuko's the one behind bars every time that he's speaking, and Iroh is never shot so that you see his face behind bars. And like, that's a classic filmmaking thing to do. Like, it's an easy trick, but it's so right, and it makes so much sense, and it plays into that theme perfectly. Because yeah, you're right, Zuko has everything he wants, but he's the one who's a prisoner, and Iroh's in complete control, because at the end of the day, Iroh never compromised who he thought he was.
Yeah, I really like that. How'd you guys feel about Iroh's appearances in Korra?
I like his scenes. I don't think Korra's a good show, and I will leave it at that before people hate me.
I like his scenes. I think they're fine. I mostly agree that Korra's a mediocre show, but season 3 slaps, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise.
I will not engage.
All right. Season 3
I don't
slaps.
want to get into it.
Season 3 slaps. All right, what's your number 1?
Is it my turn?
Yeah, we both picked Iroh.
Okay. Yeah, so I knew 100% no one else would pick this. Mostly because I think I'm kind of cheating, but fuck it, it's my show. You're not going to fight me. And season 3 does indeed not slap, so you're definitely not going to fight me. You're not going to drive all the way from Ohio to fight me. Anyway, so yeah, my pick is this Diego De La Vega.
Oh,
1,
nice.
2, 3. So Steve got it. Matt's sitting here like, yes, that person.
Oops. Of whom do you? I'm literally googling this character.
Zorro, my
Yep,
friend
Zorro.
Zorro.
Oh,
Yeah.
I saw the Antonio Banderas movie once, I think.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the reasons. So yeah, Diego De La Vega is Zorro. He's kind of the predecessor of Batman in a number of ways. There's a lot of predecessors of Batman, but Zorro's one of the biggest influences, of course. And it's again, I started this list off with Batman as my number 3, and that's the case where he's the protagonist, but he does serve a mentor role very often throughout his history. And oddly enough, Deo De La Vega has not served a mentor role through very much of his history, but god damn, when he does, it works so well. Deo De La Vega is primarily the protagonist of every Zorro story that you're gonna see. Like not every, of 95% of Zorro stories that don't just put some guy in a black hat and mask and call him Zorro, Diego De La Vega is gonna be the protagonist. And that means that those few times where they do a legacy Zorro character, where Diego was Zorro and then someone else is picking up the sword and the hat and the mask and all that stuff, it usually ends up being Diego who trains him. That's what you get in Mask of Zorro with Antonio Banderas is Alejandro, and he later in the second movie he becomes Alejandro de la Vega, but in that first movie, and it shouldn't work, and it is very dated to the 90s, but it's fine because Spaniards are indeed white, is Anthony fucking Hopkins plays Diego De La Vega. It is pretty awkward, I'm not gonna lie. It's very 90s dated, but god damn, it's so good.
He sells it though, right? Mask of Zorro is fucking great.
Mask of Zorro is easily the best superhero movie of the 90s, no cap.
Mask of Zorro is easily, I'll go one step further. Mask of Zorro is easily one of the best superhero movies ever.
No, I agree. It is great. I fucking love Mask of Zorro. So yeah, fucking Anthony Hopkins as Diego De La Vega in that mentor role is just, he's so perfect. He's so powerful. I adore the way that he plays Diego De La Vega as a mentor. And it's just, he sells it so perfectly. It's undeniably, it's so cool. Because we do this quite a bit with mentor characters where they were great and they were so-and-so. But very rarely is that shown, and it's usually shown in retrospect. It's usually shown like you have a mentor character that's introduced as a mentor, and then they get some kind of story or something that shows them in their prime, as like a spin-off. Whereas when Diego De La Vega becomes a mentor for a story, it suddenly has so much more impact because you have all that material to see of Diego being Zorro, and then he's passing that on. And the other time that they did it is the other really notable example, because it does happen fairly often when they do Legacy Zorro stuff, but the other time that it's really, really stood out to me is Django Zorro by Matt Wagner and Quentin Tarantino. I fucking adore that comic so much. It's one of those things that probably shouldn't work, but it so does. And I adore the idea that fucking Django from Django Unchained meets Zorro in the Wild West, and they form a bit of a partnership, and Diego suddenly becomes a mentor and teaches Django how to go from being a like classical hero for like the damsel in distress kind of situation to being a symbol of power, a symbol of pride. I fucking love it. Because Django gets this great little internal monologue part where he's sitting there thinking about how much Diego has gotten into his head about not just going on to the next job, not just having pride in yourself, but to help to instill that pride in others. And he's like, God damn it, Diego. Have me acting a damn fool. And then he like fucking blows up a train. It's so good. And there's this I absolutely adore it when Diego takes on that mentorship role. He wears it so perfectly, and it's such a good look for Zorro. Zorro is one of those things where I would be perfectly happy if Zorro became more known as a legacy character, a legacy title that goes from, character to character to character, than just sticking with Diego De La Vega in 1820s California. Or no, 1800s California. I'd perfectly be happy if Zorro just became a legacy, and if you started all off with just Diego De La Vega passes on the mantle. Because goddamn, he does it so well. He fills those shoes so perfectly. I adore it.
I need to rewatch this movie.
Dude, it is fucking great. You are in for a good time. Get the woman, get the wife, get the popcorn, and it is just a good ass time. Fucking Anthony Hopkins is in it, fucking Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones at peak 90s sexiness at the same time. Bisexuals beware.
Noted. Thank you for the warning.
It's a good fucking movie. I really, really fucking love that movie. Yeah. That's what I got. Fucking Diego De La Vega, great mentor who is not always portrayed as a mentor, but when he does it, he fucking kills it.
Right?
Yeah. You should also.
All I got is everyone should watch Mask of Zorro.
Everyone should watch Mask of Zorro. Everyone should read Django Zorro because it's a really fucking good comic. There's still rumors saying they're gonna adapt it into a film, and like that's always like stuff stirring with Tarantino properties. It's like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a movie, and I can't help but think it's like Tarantino saying, I might make a movie about this. That'd be kind of cool, and then just that becoming the rumor mill. Whatever. Anyway, okay, so that wraps up our top 10 list. So, Steve, you picked this topic, yes?
I did. I think it's Matt's turn for a review since there is no rock, paper, scissors challenge.
I mean, we could. If Matt's got something for a review, what are we reviewing, Matt?
We are reviewing The Fast and the Furious, the first film.
Yeah!
In
my
the
fucking
Fast and the Furious franchise.
I'm so hyped for this.
My wife and I recently watched this movie for the first time ever and fell in love with it. So we are reviewing The Fast and the Furious, the first film in the saga. The second one sucks, by the way, but the first one was so hype that we want to watch it again, and I want to talk about it.
The second one is a pilot for a USA TV show, or at least it should be, but the first one fucking...
So yes, The Fast and the Furious.
Okay, all right. God, I would be so much more excited if we were talking about number 3. We'll get there. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching. And until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I am the mentor erotica lover.
And I'm the random Yu-Gi-Oh card of the week.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Da, 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 da.